everybody! I am back and I am doing something I haven't done in a while, which is going to be a podcast of sort, talking about the history of liquor and beer. I haven't done one of these in, it's been a minute, but it's something I've been wanting to do for a while. And diving into this, we're going to be talking about scotch. Scotch whiskey. Whiskey with a Y, not with an E. They spell it different. Don't know honestly why. I try to actually look into it. It's just their preference how they spell it. But diving into this history, whew, there's a long range of histories, and even more specifically, there are various different type of scotch, which is an American bourbon is only one type, like one or two type of bourbon. Well, that technically only one type of bourbon. And then everything else just becomes wheated and corn and all that stuff. But this time around, it's a little bit of a mix up because now we're based it on region and regional scotch, and then there's blended scotch, single malt scotch, and blended single malt scotch. That is a whole different can of worms here. So I'm not going to get into too much detail about the history in each one, because then this is going to be a 2-hour long documentary, which requires me to actually memorize a lot more than I am capable of doing. But this will be a brief train fast summary of it all, and then we're going to get into all the different types of scotch and what it actually tastes like and feel. So I am also winging it, but I do got information on it. If you want to correct me on the comments, feel free, because I am still really learning more about scotch as we go on. But this is definitely has been a fun experience to learn it and re-drink it. So where do we start off first? Let's start off with the history of scotch. So the history of scotch, pretty much it started around the 15th century in obviously Scotland, in the island right outside of Ireland. Small island, everyone knows what Scotland is all about. Everyone's seen Braveheart, even though, fun fact, Braveheart is the super inaccurate depicting of William Wallace. Read a book. But Scotland was created around the 17th century. A guy named Friar John. Friar John memorized the instruction by writing a poem, and that's how it began passed down through centuries. The poem going, eight bowls of malt to fire, John Core, whereabout to make aqua vista.
That's close enough.
But with that little fact of a poem, people learned how to make scotch in an instant. And then within the 1465s and onwards, you got all these little mom and pops making their own scotches. With that being said, because it got so bad in Scotland, the making of these illegal substance, Scotland had to put in a really strict tax, almost their version of prohibition. And they had these guys named gaugers to go out and shut down these illegal distilleries or mom and pop distilleries, and so they could control it. Kind of like Friar Tuck type Robin Hood stuff, where they'll go, give me your money, you can't give me money, shut it down. With that being said, this was like this for a long time. But around the 18th centuries, a former gauger turned poet named Robert Burns. Robert Burns, not Mr. Montgomery Burns. Robert Burns, he wrote a poem called The Scotch Story. And for some odd reason, it just took off and gave the curiosity around the world. After that, the Scotland Yards had no choice but to kind of like dumb down the tax law that they had, but only allow certain amounts of distillery to be open. And this gave birth to the regional scotch that we got now. Up in 2009, they updated what qualifies as a scotch, which you gotta say, if you really put in mind, is it the bourbon law hasn't been changed in over 100 years. Same with the gin laws and stuff like that. But scotch is an evolving process, and it's always constantly changing and updating, either getting stricter or more looser with their rules. Scotch is made out of, almost like whiskey, made out of malted barley. Malted barley, heated over peat. And it has certain cereals and grains as well in it, sometimes fruits. So every now and then you get a scotch that tastes like an apple or caramel and stuff like that. To be considered a scotch, it has to be, of course, made in Scotland. It has to be fermented, distilled, no more than 94% proof by volume. It can't, and when you bottle it, it has to be at 40 proof or above. It can't contain nothing else in the water outside of caramel coloring, and then the one big one is it has to be aged for a minimum 3 years. With scotch, 3 years. Every scotch, cheap scotch, is aged for at least 3 years. The more popular ones are usually 10 years. Then you get further and further. Scotch is one of the few ones where the older it gets, the better it actually tastes, based on your preference. Sometimes it's more maltier, sometimes more smokier, sometimes more fruity. It just depends on your flavor palette. So, when it comes to scotch, there are 3 different types of scotch, 5 different regions. Officially it's 4, but here lately since 2009, they added the 5th one because there is such a change in the taste palettes that people want to consider it on there. And I'll get to that here in a minute, but let's get briefly through the 3 different types of scotch. The most popular one, the one that sells all over the world, which is going to be your blended scotch. Blended scotch, and that is your Johnny Walkers. Your Johnny Walker, your Buchanas, or Buchanan, may I add. Those are blended scotch. Those are just what they, depending on what it sounds like, they just grab any barrel from any distillery, really, and they just mix it together and get up to the palate that they like, and they sell. Johnny Walker being the most popular one, of course, that everybody knows, and Buchanan's as well. Second one. This is a little bit trickier because you're literally looking at a one finite word there, which is going to be a big inclusive in the third one. Blended malted scotch. Blended malted scotch is the second most popular scotch sold around the world, and that is your monkey shoulders and such, which is my personal favorite in scotch, monkey shoulders. Blended malted scotch, blended of course meaning different barrels from different distilleries. The malted part is unique because to be considered scotch, especially single malted scotch, it has to be 100% malted barley, 100%. Nothing else. Unlike in America, the rule is it has to be over 51% to be anything considered. 51% rye, 50% wheat, 51% corn, and that takes the distillery of that. Even here in America, you can make a single malt whiskey, just can't call it scotch. I mean, it only has to be 51% malted barley, and that's how you make single malt whiskey here in America. Now in Scotland, different rules apply. It has to be 100% malted barley to be considered a malted scotch. Now blended malted scotch is what it sounds like. Different barrels, 100% malted batches mixed together, and that is your blended malted scotch. Single malted scotches. Single malt scotches is exactly what it sounds like. One barrel made from one distillery, from one batch, 100% malted barley. Those are the ones that are very more expensive, harder to obtain sometimes, depending on the brand you're looking for. And then those are the ones that really define your taste palettes. Now, single malt scotch. Single malt scotch is when it gets really complicated, and it has several different types of regions, and that's where you have to really start picking your flavor palettes, and that's how you can actually specifically define yourself based on the palettes that you like. So there's 5 regions. Technically there's 4, but like I said, of 2009 they started recognizing one as the 5th one. So now unofficially there's 5, officially there's 4. They're getting, the Rich is going to make it 5, but this is how the order goes. You got your Highlands, you got your Islands, you got your Eastleigh, Lowlands, and Cat Belt Town. And because each one does have its own unique flavor and touches. So let's start off with the easy ones, the ones that everybody knows. So we're going to get into the regions now. So we're going to start high and then work our way down and around. Highlands are one of the most softer tones of whiskeys. Specifically, it is also the most easier one to drink, especially on ice. They normally taste like fruitcake. It's very malty, with subtle hint of smokiness to it. A lot of dry weedy stuff in it. To me, it's one of the easier one to drink to a certain extent. It's not my personal favorite, but it is highly enjoyable, especially when you're trying to make something like a painkiller something like that. It's extremely, extremely good. One of the most popular ones, and they got a shitload of listing ones. One of the most popular ones when it comes to Highland is Oban. And I got my Oban right here. Oban Reserve Bay. This is the Game of Thrones edition, the nice watch. This is extremely, extremely good. A lot darker than normal. I want to say it's aged 10 years. But Oban, especially Oban 12 years, is one of the most popular ones. There's also one called the Oban Seaside. If you really want to try, it's a little on the expensive side. It's about $80 a bottle. But, like I said, it's not my personal favorite. There's a lot that we'll get to my personal favorites here in a minute, which there's so much confusion. So let's just fly into that. The islands gets confused for Highland a lot, and let me explain. So for the longest time, the islands and Highlands, Highlands, were considered one giant group because they're all on the high top of Scotland. So, but what ended up happening was people started discovering that the flavor palette for the island side of the Highlands were extremely different. It was more salty because they're surrounded by water and known to the ocean. And sometimes they use that salt air gets into distilleries and add a different profile to the liquor, which in cause makes the liquor a lot more softer and smoother on the palate. So around 2009, they decided to just go ahead and name the islands a fifth category in their differences of the single malts. So Oban kind of, quite honestly, the Highlands kind of got pushed back to the side because, in actuality, the more popular ones that sold a lot when it comes to the single malt category is the islands. And the islands, despite what it says on the name, one of the bigger distilleries out there is Highland Park. Highland Park 12 is one of my personal favorites. Extremely smooth, extremely fruity at that. It's a lot of apple caramel taste with some salt in it. And then the next up that I like a lot from them is the Talisker 10 year. 10 years old. I mean, it has a lot of fruits, it has a lot of peats, it has a lot of malts. It's super easy to go down. My personal favorite out of all of these is the Islands, and it's the one that I will suggest anyone to try out, in my personal opinion, if you want to get into Scotch or want to try to learn more about Scotch, would be the Island Scotches. And despite what people say, they're the easier ones to find. In all honesty, because there's a lot of confusion, especially when you go to liquor stores. They still consider these two Highlands, but in actuality they're islands. If you go to a Scotch-based bar, they'll have a list, and it's more divided, more specific in that term. Other than that, I mean, you really can't go wrong with the taste profile when it comes to that. Let's get over to one of the most brutal ones for me. I say brutal ones because these are the more harsher tones. We're going to talk about the Isles, Islay. It's when you read it, it says Islay, but it's pronounced Islay.
Pronounced Isla.
It's just the way to pronounce it. So,
Isla.
You got your more darker tones, the heavy charcoal barrel smelling types of scotches. These are for the ones that love to smoke cigars, that really love that really bitter taste of whiskey, that just wants to feel that burning, keep you warm at night type shit. This is where they come from. Lava Gold being the most popular one, and I got here
Isla.
Gold. But Lava Gold is the most popular one. It's the one that everyone recognizes, especially if you watch Park and Rec. I think Nick something drinks out of it. So I clearly drink mine, but and this is Lava Gold 9 year, the Game of Thrones edition, the Lannister one. And I gotta tell you, they were smart about picking Lava Gold to be the Lannister one because it's such a harsh smell. Just an incredible smell. Now I do love the smell of it. It's that burnt barrel smell, but it also has a lot of chocolateness to it. There's some dry fruit in it, malts as well. But with that being said, this is the one that's gonna give you that real harsh taste. That it's gonna wake you up. It's gonna spun you up. These are the ones that they normally use as well for to make painkillers. To make a painkiller, they use a Speyside with some lime juice, honey, and then they top this off with a lava ghoul, a smoky whiskey to give you that balance of it. And it works. It's a wonderful drink. That's one reason why this thing's almost empty, because I've used it a lot to make painkillers before. It's not my personal favorite, but there is some qualities to it. I always usually drink when I do round the worlds. It's a great palate changer. It instantly changes your taste palate in an instant, because you go from such a light drinking scotches to like, whoo, it wakes you up. Speyside is a little bit more light in tone, but it comes with a lot more dryness to it. Kind of like the Islands, except this one I feel like it's a lot light. I'm not my personal favorite. Actually, not take it back. It is great. Speysides are great. You got your one of the most popular ones, the Glenavin. One of the unsung heroes is the Morlock, and that's actually one of my favorite ones right now. It's really fruity, but it has a dry aftertaste. Again, it's all based on your palate. It's kind of almost like a wine-like taste the Speyside would give you. And if you like that dry wine, Chardonnay type deal, then you will love Speyside. Now we are going to go into the lowlands. The lowlands is not very popular. It's the more mountain areas. A lot more of a whiskey type thing with the lowlands, in my personal opinion. It's going to give you that really super dry taste. It's going to pretty much taste like regular corn whiskey. That's how I see it as. And it's not very popular. There's not too many distilleries out of the lowlands. One of the ones that I actually did enjoy here is the Bolton. It's all based on palates, and it's not much to say about the lowlands really. It's just that you get a lot of that grassy taste, and again, it's all based on preferences. In the end, like if I'll say anything about the lowlands, is if you like that gin grass flavor, you will love the lowlands. That is probably the best way I can interpret that. It's kind of hard to tell because lowlands and Speyside get mixed up a lot, especially because it's so close to each other in region. The real distinct flavor would be the extra dryness of it. Not much bitterness to it, but just so much dryness. The real bitter one is actually going to be the Islay. And a lot of people swear by it. But the lowlands is a safe palate. Let's put it like that. Safe palate for people who just don't want to try. It's easy to do shots with. And it's incredibly cheaper to buy lowland scotch because it's not a very popular scotch to begin with. One of the most rarest regions, the ones that don't really exist much, it doesn't get sold a lot because there's no real, unless you're an enthusiast, there is no real demand for it. And that is the Cape Belt Town. Cape Belt Town is the smallest region in Scotland, but it's the oldest region in Scotland. They used to have 500 distilleries there, and they all got shut down. Now they're down to 4. Main reason is because they used to make so much scotch there, but none of it was good. It was all bootleggers, and so they just all went out of business. Only a handful survived. One of the popular ones would be the Spring Bank is one of the most popular, or the Glenskota. Glenskota to me, I've tried it. I actually like it, but it is an expensive bottle. This one went up to like $100, and this the cheapest one. They can go up to $200 because because they only make so much of it. They don't really affiliate with anyone else. I don't even think they have that much of a distribution outside of Scotland. So it's kind of hard to find an actual place that sells it and to sell it on a cheaper end, especially when it comes to Springbank. But it's a lot. To me, it's a smoother palate. It's for people who don't like that fruity flavor, but don't like that smokiness after it. This is the perfect blend of all of the accumulation of the regions. Like you get your fruits, you get your dryness, you get your balance, and you get no bite. That is pretty much this one right here. I would do an episode with the taste palettes in mind. I have it right here, but I want to do that with somebody else because I think that would kind of emphasize the different flavors if I have someone else to balance off of. But right now, I'm doing this on my own. And the whole point of it was just to show you all the different types of scotches and what it does and what it brings to the table. Like I said, my personal favorite is going to be the Talisker and the Morlock. And these three different regions. You got your island, you got your Speyside, and you got your Cape Town. Other than that, I mean, I can deal with the Eastlay or Eastlay. I can deal with Lowlands. I can deal with the Highlands. But these will be my personal favorite because it has such a different balance to it, especially when you drink it on an around the world type thing. Man, it's like the change in flavors goes through you fucking fast. And it's a lot to take in. I get it. And it's probably going to be one of the more boring episodes, but I always wanted to do something about Scotch because I do love Scotch. I enjoy it. I enjoy the profile. It is one of the original drinks that I used to have on ice before I got into doing bourbon and shit. It's such a smooth drink to sip on. And my honest opinion on it, if you ever want to get a girl to start drinking liquor with you like that, the best way to do it is not with whiskey, it's not with wheated bourbon, it's with Scotch because it's so light. It's almost like drinking wine sometimes or champagne sometimes because of the light profile. Because it's so light, it's so fruity at times, depending on the brand that you get or depending on the region you get. Like I said, the easiest way to do that is to get you a blended malted, and that's the easiest way to get into Scotch because to me that's the best profile. Some people will tell you that the other easy way would be to get you on Eastlay, but that's all based on your preference profile. Me, I like to go light and then go hard. That's usually how it worked out for me. So the lightest way you can start it will be with a monkey shoulders or with a Talisker, which again, the reason I put this on the list because Talisker is a little expensive. This is the $80 bottle, which I'm already going through because it's a fucking good Scotch. Morlock is super hard to find. Only certain liquor stores carry it, but they are starting to get a little popularity on it because I just read an article saying this is the best kept secret, and just have fun with it. Just go out and have fun with it. There's plenty of bars out there to do round the world scotches that will give you different flavor types. I mean, probably a little pricey, but I suggest you try it out, man. Just if you really love bourbons, or you're just tired of fighting over allocated bourbons or allocated whiskeys, go into the Scotch world, man. That shit is wide open at the moment right now, and it hasn't been popped yet. Try it out. I guarantee you won't regret it at all. Maybe your wallet will, but you won't. It's super fun. All right, my friend. I hope this was educational, somewhat, not a lot. Until next time, drink safe, drink smart, drink responsibly. I will have another episode with the Scotches. Scotches will be back with Alex. We will do around the world with it and see which one we ended up liking together. And that would be in the near future. So, thank you for your patience. Thank you for tuning in. Signing off. Adios.